At some point in 1977, before Neil Young went to Florida and then Nashville for the recording of the Comes a Time album, he was in California hanging out with his friend, the actor Dean Stockwell. Having come so close to collaborating before on Stockwell's unmade movie After the Gold Rush, the pair were talking about making another movie together. This one would be even more of a far-out concept than the previous one. It was going to be called, they decided, The Tree from Outer Space, evolving the idea behind After the Gold Rush, flying the silver seed, right? Well, this was going to be a fucking tree that changed into a rocket, Stockwell said. It was going to be really bananas. Young took the idea seriously enough. He, the actor Russ Tamblyn, and Larry Johnson actually went out on expeditions, scouting for suitable trees. The plot of this movie, according to Young, started with these guys that hypnotize a chicken, and the chicken somehow had a vision that he had to go to this tree, and then the people who had hypnotized the chicken started seeing that they would have to go to the tree also, so they left the chicken behind and went to the tree. You with me so far? Young said the people got to the tree, got inside it, and then the thing takes off into space. This guy had a barbershop that he opened on top of the tree, said Young. They're in outer space and Saturn's out there and everything, and they're getting a haircut. The spacefaring tree was apparently powered by music and other things as well. As Young went on to explain, the guy was playing the organ, but he's not getting enough power from it, so he ends up getting a blowjob while he was playing, and that did it. When he came, the tree just fucking took off. Young went on to share the entire convoluted plot of this pothead fever dream in even more detail in Jimmy McDonough's excellent biography, Shaky. Whilst it may not shock you to learn that this potential cinematic masterpiece never actually got made, like the previous aborted project, Young took some musical inspiration from it and wrote the song Lost in Space, which eventually came out on the album Hawks and Doves. So whilst the tree from Outer Space never actually got off the ground, Young's next film project with Dean Stockwell actually did. At first, on paper, this new film project actually sounded pretty normal compared to The Tree from Outer Space. I was just trying to make a movie about a guy, Young said, Lionel, in his situation, just one day in this guy's life, with some people who were basically innocent bystanders on the day the Earth came to an end. Just people who happened to be there. That was what it was supposed to be about. Anyway, got a bit carried away. The movie, which came to be titled Human Highway, was made up on the spot by punks, potheads and former alcoholics, said Young later. There was no plan and no script, said Dean Stockwell, who co-starred in the film alongside a seriously impressive cast. Actually, there was Dennis Hopper, Russ Tamblyn, and future Oscar nominee Sally Kirkland. We decided that we would all write our own parts, said Tamblyn. We had a script writer who would write the script after we had finished shooting the scene. The presence of Stockwell, Tamblyn and Hopper gave Human Highway a very Lynchian feel, as all three later went on to do amazing work with the great director David Lynch. Hopper and Stockwell in Blue Velvet, and Russ Tamblyn playing Dr. Jacoby in all 3 seasons of Twin Peaks. And the Lynch connection doesn't stop there. The waitress Charlotte Goodnight in the movie is played by Charlotte Stewart, who had played Mary X in Eraserhead. There was another key ingredient that Young threw into this film as well. It was a band of upstart youngsters from Ohio that Stockwell had introduced him to one day by playing him a tape of their songs that had been given to him by Stockwell's girlfriend at the time, Tony Basil. That band was Devo, who at the time had just relocated to California. Man, you gotta listen to this, Stockwell said, and Stockwell played him the songs Mongoloid and Satisfaction. Stockwell and Young attended a Devo show at the Starwood in LA, and Young was blown away by not only the band's wild stage attire and their brilliantly warped sense of rhythm, but also their creativity, humour, and all served up in short, sharp bursts of, well, just kick-ass, high-energy rock and roll. After the show, Young and Stockwell approached the band and asked them if they wanted to be in their movie, and so they joined the cast of Human Highway. Devo were not only going to play a big part in the movie, but also would have a big influence on the direction that Neil Young would take later in the year. Shooting began in the spring of 1978 in San Francisco. This was Devo's first experience of being around Hollywood people, and according to Mark Mothersbaugh, they were all drinking heavily, doing lots of drugs, and seemed very unhappy, with Neil Young just about being the only person who seemed grounded. Guitarist Gerald Casale said it was like observing another reality as an alien being, like being the nerd that finally gets let into the prom. Dennis Hopper, in particular, was fully into a major phase of substance abuse at this point, and appeared to the members of Devo as not being very far removed from his horrifying Frank Booth persona from Blue Velvet. Hopper, I remember, as being totally frightening, said Casale. He'd chase you around the set, giving you his rap, whether you wanted to hear it or not. Devo, you think your shit don't stink, do ya? And Dean Stockwell would be right behind him, laughing an evil laugh. A lot of mindfuck games. During this time, Neil Young did a run of solo acoustic shows at the boarding house in San Francisco, which was filmed for inclusion in the movie. Accompanied on stage only by 3 wooden cigar store Indians, Young performed many unreleased songs, such as Pocahontas, Human Highway, Comes a Time, to a rapt audience of around just 300. And also, for the first time, My Hey Hey, Out of the Blue, which had the audience cheering and clapping during the song, despite having never heard it before, a testament to the song's intensity, even when played on just an acoustic guitar. After the show on May 27th, Young went on stage with Devo at Mabahade Gardens, a punk club where Devo had already built up an enthusiastic following. Announcing Young as the grandpa of granola rock and ancient history up close, Devo threw Young into the crowd, a hippie to be devoured by the punks, with the audience chanting, "Real dung! Real dung! Bougie boy!" Mark Mothersbaugh, in a terrifying rubber baby mask and a diaper, sang After the Gold Rush in his inimitable style as an encore. The event was filmed, and parts of this are in the movie, about halfway through as part of Lionel Switch's dream sequence. After the last boarding house show, Young and Devo went into a studio called Different Fur, where late into the night they jammed on that new song Young had performed earlier at the boarding house, My Hey Hey, this time completely Devo-fying it with Bougie Boy on vocals, sitting in the baby's crib, Neil going nuts on Old Black, with copious bursts of pure electronic filth throughout. It was wild and intense, with the staccato rhythms of Devo contrasting nicely with the full fat organic sludge of Young's guitar. Like all the best rock and roll and punk rock, it's tight but it's loose at the same time. Neil Young was actually one of the very few big rock stars from the 60s to not only recognise and understand what punk rock was, but to actually respond to it in a meaningful way through his work. His collaboration with Devo is a great example. And Devo, by the way, although they are often pigeonholed as some sort of one-hit wonder from the early 80s, some sort of elaborate new wave comedy act with funny costumes, were in fact one of the original punk bands from the very first wave of punk, having formed in 1973. Listen to songs like Uncontrollable Urge and Gut Feeling, and there's no mistaking the band were clearly a high-energy, raucous garage rock band before anything else. The idea behind Devo was the concept that human beings were not evolving, but in fact devolving, evidenced by the dysfunction and herd mentality of American society at the time. Although they played around with this concept in a jokey, satirical way at first, there was one event that made them actually take the concept seriously. That event was the Kent State Massacre of 1970. On that day, on May the 4th, 1970, Jerry Casale, Bob Lewis and Mark Mothersbaugh were all students at the Kent State University when 4 unarmed students were shot dead by the Ohio National Guard during a protest. Among the 4 dead were Casale's friends, Jeffrey Miller and Alison Krauss. This event would in fact be cited multiple times through the years by the band as being the original impetus for forming the band Devo in the first place. The event had also prompted Neil Young to write the song Ohio. So Devo and Neil Young were connected in more ways than one, and maybe more than either of them even realised at the time. Neil Young's embrace of punk rock marked him out as different from the rest of his peers, who mostly found it abhorrent, like David Crosby, who appeared to be genuinely offended by it. Young, on the other hand, now considered an elder by the younger wave of musicians breaking through, was completely open to the renewal that it offered. After the Different Fur session with Devo, he showed the recording to Crazy Horse and said to them, "You've got to learn this. We need to play it this way. We had tried to play Hey Hey, but we weren't hitting it that good," said Poncho. The film of him playing it with Devo inspired us to play it harder. From then on, we played the shit out of that song. Filming on Human Highway didn't wrap up in 1978. It was simply put on hold, whilst Young went back to music, dealing with the delay of the release of the Comes a Time album, which was recorded back at the end of 77, and began playing again with Crazy Horse, in anticipation of another tour at the end of the year. Shooting on the movie resumed sporadically over the following years. Young reassembled the cast each time, and each time Dennis Hopper seemed to be even more insane on drugs than before. Using a real knife in his role as the cook, he was doing some knife tricks, and Sally Kirkland unwisely tried to grab hold of the knife. She suffered a huge cut, which severed a tendon. After coming out of hospital, Kirkland tried to sue both Hopper and Young, also claiming that Hopper was so out of it on drugs that he had deliberately stabbed her. She said, "I consumed an ounce of amyl nitrate, a pound of marijuana, and 3 quarts of tequila," said Hopper. That was not true. I had only done half that amount. The original cut of the movie opens after the bombs have already dropped, with the sound of Boogie Boy's voice. Yes, it is pronounced that way, not Boogie Boy, as I previously thought. Talk about a weenie roast. We got one here, commenting on the post-apocalyptic wasteland laid out before him. He parodies Bob Dylan. "The answer, my friend, is breaking in the wind," whilst the Mark Mothersbaugh score plays. His first score, he went on to do several Wes Anderson movies and countless TV shows, including Rugrats, of course, and we see a red sun glowing through the smog over an industrial landscape, Linear Valley. Devo appear, also glowing red, as nuclear garbage men. Young and Tamblyn appear riding their bikes to work, clearly pedalling while stationary in front of a landscape projected on a screen behind them. The comic book aesthetic was deliberately sought by Young, and for the most part pulls it off pretty successfully. Young plays Lionel Switch, a name which is a nod to his favourite non-musical hobby, model trains. He even bought the model train company, Lionel. A simple-minded gas station attendant who dreams of being a rock star. The gas station sits in the glowing red shadow of the nuclear plant where Devo work. Young's acting was self-admittedly a nod to Jerry Lewis, and the film itself shows influence from The Wizard of Oz and Japanese Godzilla movies. The music is unsurprisingly as eclectic as Neil Young's back catalogue, ranging from 50s pop and country to Devo's cover of Worried Man Blues, Mark Mothersbaugh's score, and tracks from Young's Trans LP, which by the time of the film's premiere was his latest album. Young said in his biography Waging Heavy Peace, "It is the dorkiest damn movie ever made, and it walks a very fine line right on the edge of being too dorky. Some may say it falls over that line. Actually, the movie willingly leaps over that line multiple times and doubles down on it, and is all the more entertaining for it." The diner at the gas station is one of the many uncannily Lynchian elements of this movie. It's a classic comic book version of a small town Midwest diner, and young Otto, played by Dean Stockwell, plans on firing everybody and burning it down to collect the insurance money. Another weirdly Lynchian element of this movie is a shot of a owl on a tree, and if you've ever seen Twin Peaks, you'll know what I'm talking about. Lionel has a serious crush on the waitress Charlotte Goodnight, which leads to some amazing face work by Young. Genuinely, actually pretty funny. But she has a crush on the milkman, and there's also an Arab sheikh there for some reason, which today we would consider, let's say, a little bit problematic. The rock star Frankie Fontaine pulls up in his limo, and we get a glimpse of him looking incredibly pale and fucked up in the back of the car, and has an awkward exchange with Lionel. And while working on Frankie's limo, Lionel gets bumped on his head by his own wrench, and we enter the dream sequence where he becomes a rock star with a backup band of cigar store Indians. Backstage, he is given a milk bath by Irene. Lionel travels with his band and crew, and then we hear the song Going Back from the Comes a Time album, and they end up in the desert. Native Americans prepare the bonfire to burn the wooden Indians. Soon Lionel is playing music and dancing around the bonfire with everyone, and they appear to be having a big powwow. We then have My Hey Hey, a 9-minute version jamming in the studio with Devo. Lionel wakes up from his dream surrounded by his friends, a bit like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Pretty soon after that, we have the start of Global Nuclear War, announced by Boogie Boy as the hour of sleep. He then gives everyone shovels and commands everyone to dig that hole and dance like a mole. And then they have the big musical number at the end, which is Devo's version of Worried Man Blues, as the planet is engulfed in a radioactive glow, and the cast climb a stairway to heaven, accompanied by harp music as the credits roll. Young eventually finished the movie 4 years and $3 million of his own money later, in 1982, and it received its premiere in the summer of '83, when it was shown to a few limited audiences and critics who absolutely hated it. It bombed, if you'll excuse the nuclear pun. It then disappeared from public consumption until 1995, when it was released on VHS for the first time. It has since fared much better with audiences and critics, and viewing the film today is actually quite good fun if you're into that sort of thing. The surreal, actually hyper-real tone of the film, the set design, is not a million miles away from the likes of Tim Burton, John Waters, and of course David Lynch. It's not anywhere near as good as those, but the visuals of the film are quite enjoyable. The colours, the actors, the sheer goofiness of Neil Young's acting, the brilliant way Devo are used in the film, almost like a Greek chorus, and of course the music ain't bad either. So it's far from being the worst movie ever made, which some critics tried to say, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Rewind that VHS back to the summer of '78. With shooting paused, Neil was back in his rusted out garage with Crazy Horse, teaching them how to play his new songs with a crazed new sonic attack and preparing them for a new tour. This tour would forever change the way Young and the Horse would be perceived in the eyes of fans and critics alike thereafter. It would spawn 2 acclaimed albums and one of the greatest concert movies ever made. So we will take a closer look at all that in the next video. So for now, that's all from me on this one. Bye for now.